The morning air over Fort Brenton military training base was sharp enough to sting the lungs. A thin layer of fog still clung to the ground as trucks rolled in one after another, unloading fresh recruits onto the gravel yard. No music. No welcome speech. Just silence and pressure. This wasn't a place that greeted people. It tested them. And most people failed before they even realized they were being tested. Arrival of the new recruits. Private recruits stood in scattered lines, trying to find balance in their new uniforms. Some adjusted their caps nervously. Some stared straight ahead, pretending confidence. Some already looked like they regretted coming. Among them stood one woman who didn't match the energy of fear around her. Private Ava Collins. No flashy posture. No nervous twitching. Just stillness. That stillness made her stand out more than anything else. Around her, two recruits whispered. "That her, she looks normal." "Too normal," another replied. "This isn't a college fitness test." Ava heard them. She didn't react. That was her first mistake in their eyes. Not speaking. Not proving herself. Just existing calmly. First contact, Drill Sergeant Harris. A heavy silence broke like thunder. Bootsteps. Slow, controlled, intimidating. Drill Sergeant Marcus Harris entered the yard. He didn't look at the recruits as people. He looked at them like unfinished problems. His eyes scanned the line once. Then again. Then he stopped. Right in front of Ava. The air tightened instantly. "You," he said. Ava looked up. Harris tilted his head slightly. "You lost." "No, sir." A faint smirk appeared on his face. "That's interesting, because you look like someone who doesn't know what she walked into." A few recruits snickered quietly. Harris turned slightly toward the group. "Let me make something very clear." His voice rose. "This base does not care who you were outside these gates." He walked slowly along the line. "You could have been a star student, a farmer, a fighter, a failure, it doesn't matter." He stopped again. "And it especially doesn't matter if you think you belong here." His eyes returned to Ava. Something about her still didn't fit his expectations. Too calm. Too controlled. Too unreadable. He stepped closer. "Tell me something, Private Collins." Ava stayed still. Harris leaned in slightly. "What makes you think you'll survive even one day here?" A pause. The entire yard felt like it was holding its breath. Ava finally spoke. "I don't think about surviving." That caught attention. Even Harris narrowed his eyes. She continued calmly. "I focus on completing the task." A brief silence. Then Harris gave a short, cold laugh. "Wrong answer." He turned away. Then paused again. Without looking back, he said, "You'll quit before sunset." And just like that, he walked off. The first whistle. A loud whistle cut through the air. Instantly, everything changed. No more standing. No more observing. No more introductions. Only movement. "Obstacle course now," someone shouted. The recruits snapped into motion. Chaos began immediately. The obstacle course, reality hits hard. The course wasn't just difficult, it was engineered humiliation. Mud pits that swallowed legs. Walls too high to climb on first attempt. Ropes that burned palms raw. Metal frames shaking under pressure. Recruits fell instantly into survival mode. A man slipped in the first 30 seconds. Another twisted his ankle. Someone shouted in frustration. "This is insane." From above, Harris watched everything from a raised platform. Arms crossed. Expression unchanged. One instructor nearby said quietly, "We already lost 2 mentally." Harris didn't respond. He was watching something else. Ava Collins. She had entered the course with the others. But unlike most recruits, she didn't rush. She studied. She observed the structure before moving. Then she began. Slowly. A different kind of movement. While others sprinted and collapsed, Ava moved with precision. She tested each step before committing weight. She checked grip points before climbing. She adjusted mid-movement instead of forcing through mistakes. It wasn't flashy, but it was efficient. A recruit nearby noticed. "She's not panicking," he said. Another laughed while struggling through mud. "That won't matter when she hits the wall." But Ava reached the wall. And instead of jumping blindly like others, she paused, looked at it, measured it, then climbed using a diagonal motion others hadn't noticed. She reached halfway before anyone else had even stabilized. Harris's eyes narrowed slightly. "She's thinking," he muttered. An instructor replied, "Or she's just lucky." Harris didn't answer. Because luck didn't explain consistency. And Ava was consistent. The first collapse. By mid-course, exhaustion started taking its toll. Breathing grew heavier. Movements became sloppy. Confidence turned into frustration. A recruit fell into the mud pit and didn't get up immediately. "I can't do this," he muttered. Another shouted, "This isn't training, it's torture." Ava passed them without slowing. One of them looked at her. "How are you still moving like that?" She didn't answer. Not because she was ignoring him, but because she was focused. Focused on finishing. Harris noticed everything. And something inside him shifted slightly. Not admiration. Not yet. But recognition. This wasn't random survival. This was control under pressure. And that was rare. Too rare. The endurance run begins. The whistle sounded again. "Gear up 10 kilometers." Instant groans. Heavy packs were strapped onto every recruit. The weight changed everything. Bodies that were already struggling now had to carry steel, water, and equipment. The group started running. Immediately gaps formed. Fast runners pulled ahead. Weak ones fell behind. Ava stayed mid-pack. Controlled pace. Even breathing. Harris followed alongside in a vehicle, watching carefully. He pointed at her. "Collins," he said. An instructor beside him asked, "Something wrong?" Harris didn't take his eyes off her. "No." A pause. Then, "Not yet." The breaking point. At kilometer 7, reality hit hard. Sweat-drenched uniforms. Legs burned. Breathing turned uneven. One recruit dropped to his knees. Another stumbled forward before collapsing completely. The group fractured. Ava slowed slightly. Not from exhaustion. From awareness. She saw the breakdown happening around her. Then she saw something else. A man ahead struggling to stay upright. He was seconds from collapsing. Ava reached him. He whispered, "I can't keep going." She looked at him briefly. Then said something unexpected. "Then don't think about the finish." He looked up. "What?" "Think about the next step." A pause. Then he moved again. One step. Then another. Harris saw it from the vehicle. He frowned slightly. "She's stabilizing others," he said quietly. An instructor replied, "Is that allowed?" Harris didn't answer. Because rules weren't the concern anymore. Pattern recognition was. And Ava was becoming a pattern he didn't understand. Final stretch, the moment that changed everything. At kilometer 9, collapse became widespread. Bodies dropping. Recruits walking instead of running. Some stopping entirely. Ava's breathing was heavier now, but still controlled. Then it happened. A strong recruit ahead of her suddenly stopped. Knees hit the ground. Full collapse. Ava stopped too. For half a second. Everyone assumed she was done. Even Harris leaned forward slightly in the vehicle. She's hitting the wall, someone said. But Ava didn't fall. She looked at the fallen recruit. Then at the path ahead. Something shifted in her expression. Not emotion. Decision. She adjusted her grip on her gear. And started running again. Faster than before. The group behind her watched in disbelief. She just accelerated. Harris's eyes narrowed sharply. Now he wasn't guessing anymore. He was analyzing. Because what he just saw wasn't exhaustion. It was response under pressure. And that was dangerous. Very dangerous. End of day 1. As the sun began to set, the recruits finally crossed the endpoint. Some collapsed immediately. Some lay on the ground unmoving. Some stared blankly at the sky. Ava stood among them. Tired. Sweaty. But standing. Harris stepped out of the vehicle and walked toward the group. Slow. Controlled. The entire field quieted instantly. He stopped in front of Ava again. Looked at her for a long moment. Then spoke. You didn't quit. Ava didn't respond. Harris tilted his head slightly. That surprises me. He turned slightly away. Then added. But not enough. He walked off. Ava watched him go. Around her, recruits were still recovering. But she wasn't focused on them. She was focused on tomorrow. Because she could feel it already. Day 1 wasn't the test. It was just the introduction. And something told her. The real challenge hadn't even started yet. Morning after, no rest, no mercy. The night at Fort Brenton was not peaceful. It was calculated exhaustion. Recruits barely slept, not because they weren't allowed, but because their bodies wouldn't let them relax. Every muscle ached. Every thought felt heavy. And before anyone could recover, a siren exploded across the barracks. 05:00 a.m. No warnings. No delays. Just command. All RECROTS, outside in 2 minutes. Boots slammed against floors. Doors burst open. Sleep-deprived recruits stumbled into formation. And there, waiting in perfect stillness, was Drill Sergeant Harris. Arms behind his back. Eyes cold. He looked like he hadn't slept at all. Because at Fort Brenton, instructors didn't rest either. They observed. Harris draws the line. Harris paced slowly in front of the formation. You all survived day 1, he said. A pause. That was the easy part. No one reacted. They knew better now. He stopped. Then looked directly at Ava Collins again. That same pause. That same focus. You, he said. Ava straightened slightly. Harris tilted his head. I watched you yesterday. Silence tightened. And I'm still deciding if you're lucky or dangerous. A few recruits exchanged uneasy glances. Harris stepped closer. Let's find out. He turned sharply. Obstacle course again. Groans broke instantly. But Harris raised his voice. This time double load. That changed everything. Recruits froze. Double load meant increased weight. Increased risk. Increased failure rate. Someone muttered, He's trying to break us. Harris heard it. Correct. And he didn't care. The second course begins. The field was worse than yesterday. Same obstacles. But now, everything heavier. Everything harder. Everything designed to fail them faster. Ava tightened her gloves. No hesitation. No complaint. She stepped forward with the group. But Harris noticed something immediately. He wasn't just watching her movement now. He was tracking her reaction patterns. And Ava Collins had very few. That made her unpredictable. And unpredictable recruits were dangerous. Mud Pit, the first real test. The first obstacle hit hard. The mud pit was deeper today. Heavier resistance. Several recruits sank immediately. One shouted, "I can't move." Another tried pulling him out and fell in two. Chaos started early. Ava entered carefully. Step by step. The mud grabbed at her boots like it was alive. But she didn't panic. She adjusted her weight distribution. Shifted balance. Moved diagonally instead of straight. A nearby recruit shouted, "She's floating through it." But she wasn't floating. She was calculating. Harris watched from above. "Heavy load isn't slowing her," he muttered. An instructor replied, "Then what is?" Harris didn't answer. Because he didn't know yet. The wall climb, failure point. The second obstacle was the wall. High, wet, unforgiving. Even without load, it was difficult. With load, it became a filter. Recruits started failing instantly. Slipping, falling, trying again and again. Ava reached it. Paused. Looked up. A recruit behind her said, "No way she makes that." Another laughed, "Nobody does on first try." Ava didn't listen. She placed her hand on the wall. Tested grip. Shifted her stance. Then climbed. Not fast. Not flashy. But controlled. Halfway up. A recruit shouted, "She's stuck." But she wasn't stuck. She was adjusting mid-climb. A move most recruits didn't even know was possible. She reached the top. Pulled herself over. Dropped down on the other side. Harris's expression didn't change. But something in his eyes sharpened. "She adapts in real time," he said quietly. That was worse than strength. That was learning under pressure. The endurance drill, psychological pressure begins. Next phase wasn't physical. It was mental. Recruits were lined up again. Exhausted. Sweating. Barely standing. Harris walked in front of them slowly. "This next drill," he said, "will expose your limits." He signaled. Suddenly. Loud alarms. Strobe lights. Random loud explosions. Smoke releasing from vents. Confusion spread instantly. "What is this? I can't see." "Stop it!" Harris shouted over them. "Welcome to combat stress simulation." This wasn't about strength. It was about breaking focus under chaos. Ava under pressure. Inside the simulation zone, recruits moved blindly. Shouting. Panicking. Colliding with each other. Ava stood still for half a second. Not frozen. Processing. She closed her eyes briefly. Listened. Then opened them. And moved. Not reacting to noise. But ignoring it. She followed patterns instead of panic. A recruit grabbed her arm. "Help me, I can't see anything." Ava pulled him slightly. "Stay behind me." "Why you?" "Because I'm moving forward." And she did. Through smoke. Through sound. Through chaos, Harris watched closely. "She's filtering stimuli," he said. An instructor asked, "Is that trainable?" Harris replied, "No." A pause. "Or she already knows how." That answer changed the tone of the entire training. First crack in the system. Mid-simulation, something unexpected happened. A stronger recruit suddenly snapped. He threw his gear down. "I'm done." He started walking out. "This is pointless." Harris didn't stop him. He simply said, "Quitting is allowed." That surprised everyone. Then Harris added, "But failure is recorded permanently." The recruit froze. That psychological pressure alone broke more people than the drills. Ava watched him leave, then continued forward. No distraction, no emotional response, just movement. Harris makes a decision. After the simulation ended, recruits collapsed again. Some crying, some silent, some just staring at the ground. Harris walked through them, observing, judging, then stopped in front of Ava again. Long silence. He studied her more carefully this time. Not as a recruit, but as a variable. "You didn't break," he said. Ava replied calmly, "Neither did others." Harris shook his head slightly. "No." He leaned closer. "You didn't even bend." That was the first time his tone changed. Not mocking, not insulting, analytical. Ava didn't respond. Harris straightened, then said something unexpected. "Tomorrow will be worse." A pause. "And I want to see what happens when you actually struggle." Then he walked away, leaving Ava standing in silence. Dawn at Fort Brenton, something feels different. The sky over Fort Brenton wasn't peaceful that morning. It looked heavier. Gray clouds pressed low, as if the air itself was waiting. Recruits noticed it even before they stepped outside. No one spoke much. Exhaustion had turned into something deeper now. Not just physical fatigue, but anticipation of punishment. Ava Collins stood among them, adjusting her gloves quietly as always. But even she noticed something was wrong. The base was too silent. No shouting, no drills, no warm-up orders. Just silence. And that was worse than noise. Harris arrives, and everything changes. Then came the boots. Slow, controlled, deliberate. Drill Sergeant Harris walked into the yard alone. No assistants, no instructors beside him. That alone made recruits nervous. When Harris came alone, it meant something serious was coming. He stopped in front of them, looked at every face, longer than usual, then spoke. "Today is not training." A pause. Ava narrowed her eyes slightly. Harris continued, "Today is judgment." The word hit harder than any shout. Judgment, not evaluation, not practice. Finality. A recruit whispered, "What does that mean?" Harris heard it and answered immediately. "It means some of you will not continue past today." Silence dropped like a weight. Even the wind seemed to stop. The structure appears. Behind Harris, trucks arrived. Reinforced vehicles. Metal containers. Unknown equipment. Then, a massive structure was revealed. A training facility unlike anything before. Steel walls. Dark entrances. No visible exit paths. Recruits stared. One whispered, "That's not a course, that's a facility." Another said, "That looks like a simulation lab." But Harris corrected them instantly. "No, He pointed at it. This is a live combat stress chamber. A pause. Designed for advanced units. That last line hit differently. Advanced units. Not recruits. Not beginners. Something far beyond them. The announcement, the impossible test. Harris walked forward slowly. This facility runs multiple scenarios at once. He raised one finger. Combat simulation. Second finger. Hostage pressure scenario. Third finger. Psychological interference. He lowered his hand. All at the same time. Recruits froze. Someone muttered, "That's impossible." Harris nodded. "Yes." Then added, "That's why it exists." A long silence followed. Then he said the words no one wanted to hear. Failure rate 90%. A pause. Then colder. Among trained soldiers. That changed everything. This wasn't for them. This was above them. Ava notices something first. While others panicked, Ava observed something different. The structure wasn't just intimidating. It was layered. Multiple systems. Multiple triggers. Multiple exits, hidden, not visible. Her eyes narrowed slightly. She wasn't thinking about fear. She was analyzing design. Harris noticed her gaze. Of course he did. He always noticed her. He stepped slightly closer. "You see something others don't," he said quietly. Ava replied, "It's not random." Harris studied her. "No," he agreed, "it's not." A pause. Then he added, "It's intentional pressure stacking." Ava understood instantly. Multiple stress layers meant one thing. Break decision-making. Not bodies. Minds. First entry, the collapse begins. Recruits were called forward. One by one. No preparation. No warm-up. Just entry. The first group stepped in. Doors sealed instantly. Inside, chaos began. Alarms. Smoke. Movement. Shouting through speakers. The system didn't wait for adaptation. It attacked immediately. Outside, silence. Recruits waiting their turn began to panic. What is happening in there? We can hear them screaming. Harris stood still. Expression unchanged. Because this wasn't something you watched with emotion. It was something you measured. Ava's turn approaches. Her name was called. Private Ava Collins. She stepped forward. No hesitation. No glance backward. But Harris stopped her briefly. Just before she entered. "You understand what this is?" he asked. Ava replied, "A stress simulation." Harris shook his head slightly. "No." He leaned in. "This is where people find out who they really are." A pause. Then, "And most people don't like the answer." Ava met his eyes. "I already know who I am." That was her mistake. Or maybe her strength. Harris stepped aside. "Then prove it." She entered. Door sealed. Inside, the system activates. The moment Ava stepped in, everything changed. The room wasn't a room anymore. It was an environment. Smoke-filled corridors instantly. Red light strobes disrupted vision. Audio distortion created false commands. A voice echoed. Target identified. Then another. Multiple THREATS active. Ava didn't move immediately. She listened. Because chaos always had structure. If you found structure, you controlled it. Then she moved. The first layer, combat simulation. A figure appeared ahead. Then another. Simulated threats. Vast. Aggressive. Ava reacted instantly. Not panicking. Not rushing. Precision. One takedown. Then reposition. Then another. But something was wrong. The simulation wasn't scaling normally. It was escalating faster than standard protocol. Outside, instructors noticed. She's getting level 3 escalation already. Harris narrowed his eyes. No, he said quietly. She triggered it early. That meant something important. The system was reacting to her. Not the other way around. The second layer, psychological pressure. Then came the voice. Not external threats now, but internal distortion. You are behind. You are slowing team failure rate. You will not complete. The system wasn't just attacking physically. It was rewriting perception. Ava paused briefly. A recruit outside failed at the stage earlier. Broke mentally within seconds. But Ava didn't respond emotionally. Instead, she whispered to herself, "It's pattern interference," and ignored it. She moved forward again. Harris watches something impossible. Outside, Harris's expression changed slightly for the first time. Not surprise, not confusion, but recognition of anomaly. She's not reacting to psychological triggers, he said. An instructor replied, "Is that possible?" Harris shook his head slowly. No. A pause. Then, "But she is doing it." That silence meant more than words. Because systems like this were designed based on universal human response. And Ava was not responding universally. The third layer, decision trap. Inside, Ava reached a junction. Two paths. Both marked. Both active. But something felt wrong. Too symmetrical. Too clean. She stopped. For the first time in the simulation. Not because she was lost, but because she recognized a trap. A recorded voice spoke. Select route. But Ava didn't choose immediately. She scanned the structure, then realized something important. Both paths led to the same endpoint. Just different stress outcomes. A psychological fork. Not a tactical one. She exhaled slowly. Then said, "I don't choose either," and moved forward through a third, unmarked passage. System response, escalation spike. Immediately. Alarms changed tone. Simulation recalibrated. Outside monitors flickered. What did she just do? An instructor asked. Harris stepped forward slightly. She broke the decision tree structure, he said quietly. A pause. That wasn't supposed to be possible. Inside, Ava continued moving. But now the system had changed. It wasn't testing her anymore. It was adapting to her. Final chamber appears. At the end, a final door. Heavy, red lit, marked, final control room. A voice echoed. Last stage initiated. Ava paused. Inside, she understood instantly. This wasn't a completion stage. It was a pressure culmination. Everything she had experienced was leading here. She placed her hand on the door, then pushed it open. Inside the final chamber, silence that feels wrong. Ava stepped into the final chamber. The door shut behind her with a heavy mechanical sound. Clang. And then, nothing. No alarms. No smoke. No flashing lights. Just silence. That silence was worse than chaos. Because in Fort Brenton, silence meant one thing. Something was being prepared. The room was large, circular, and empty, except for one glowing central console. Above it, a single message blinked. Final decision protocol active. Ava stood still, scanning, reading, waiting. Her breathing stayed controlled, but her mind was sharper than ever. This wasn't like the previous stages. This was not combat, not endurance, not psychological noise. This was something else. A test of judgment under absolute pressure. Outside, Harris watches the impossible begin. In the control room outside, Drill Sergeant Harris stood in front of the monitors. No movement, no expression, but his eyes were locked on Ava's feed. An instructor beside him spoke quietly. This stage alone has broken trained operatives. Another added, even special forces fail it. Harris didn't respond, because he wasn't listening anymore. He was observing. And something about Ava's stillness was different. Too calm, too focused, too unreadable. Finally, he said, "She's not reacting like the others." A pause, then colder. "That's what worries me." The system speaks. Inside the chamber, a voice activated. Not loud, not aggressive, but personal. Private Ava Collins. She didn't react. Your previous performance exceeds baseline expectations. A pause. Then, this is your final assessment. The console lit up. 3 red options appeared. No explanation. No context. Just choices. Ava stepped closer. Read them silently. Then narrowed her eyes. The system continued. Select one outcome. Below it. Option A, mission success unknown cost. Option B, team preservation self-sacrifice scenario. Option C, system override attempt high-risk failure. Ava didn't move. Outside, an instructor whispered, "They're forcing a moral conflict model." Harris replied quietly, "No." A pause. "This is something else." Ava begins to see the pattern. Ava studied the screen, then the room, then the structure itself. Her eyes narrowed slightly. This wasn't a normal decision test. It wasn't about right or wrong. It was about predictability. She spoke softly to herself. "You're not testing decisions." A pause. "You're testing consistency under pressure shifts." Outside, Harris's eyes sharpened. Because she was right. Ava continued, "And you want emotional deviation." The system didn't respond, but the lights in the room dimmed slightly, as if acknowledging her understanding. The first real choice. The system repeated. Select outcome. Ava stepped closer, then said, "I don't accept these conditions." A pause. The system replied, "Noncompliance results in automatic failure." Ava didn't blink. "Then fail me." Silence. For the first time, the system hesitated. Outside, alarms flickered for half a second. An instructor froze. Did it just stall? Harris didn't answer, because he was watching something rare. A system reacting to the subject instead of controlling them. System escalation, it adapts to her. The screen changed. The 3 options disappeared, replaced by a single line. New protocol generated. Then, undefined response DETCTED. Inside the chamber, the environment shifted. Subtle at first. Floor lighting dimmed. Temperature dropped slightly. The room was adapting. Not resetting. Adapting. Ava stepped back, now fully aware. This is no longer a test scenario, she said quietly. It's learning from me. Outside, Harris's expression tightened. She triggered adaptive intelligence feedback, he said. An instructor replied. That system wasn't supposed to evolve in real time. Harris responded. It wasn't supposed to meet her. The final trap, identity pressure. The system spoke again. But this time the tone changed. Less mechanical. More human-like. Ava Collins. Why do you continue? A pause. Your survival probability is decreasing. Ava frowned slightly. This wasn't data anymore. This was psychological probing. It continued. Your past records indicate no formal elite training. Your performance exceeds known baseline capability. Explain. Ava went still. For the first time, the system was asking her something directly. Not commanding. Not evaluating. But questioning. Outside, Harris leaned forward slightly. Now even he was unsure what would happen next. Ava's answer. Ava stepped closer to the console and said calmly, I didn't come here to prove myself. A pause. I came here to see what breaks people. Silence. The system processed. Then responded. Clarify intent. Ava's expression stayed steady. I don't break under pressure. Another pause. Then she added. I remove what creates it. Outside, Harris's eyes widened slightly. Not dramatically, but enough. Because that statement wasn't emotional. It was operational. System critical failure warning. Suddenly, the room flashed red. Alert! Alert! The system voice changed tone rapidly. Warning, subject influence DATACTED. Stability of simulation, 42%. RECLABORATION required. Outside, chaos erupted in the control room. What is happening? It's destabilizing. The system is failing to maintain structure. Harris raised his hand. Stop talking. Everyone froze. He stared at the screen. Because this was no longer training. This was a confrontation between system design and human unpredictability. And Ava was winning. Final override moment. Inside the chamber, the console changed again. Now showing. System override option available. Ava looked at it. Then stepped back. She didn't rush. Didn't panic. Just observed. Then said quietly, You were never testing me. A pause. You were trying to classify me. Outside, Harris whispered. She's right. Ava continued. And you can't classify something you don't understand. She placed her hand near the console, but didn't press anything. Instead, she said, I reject classification. Silence. Then, everything stopped. System collapse sequence. The lights flickered. The console froze. The walls emitted a low mechanical hum. Outside, ALERTS triggered instantly. Core stability failure. Simulation break DATACTED. Shutdown initiated. Inside the chamber, Ava stepped back and watched the system collapse under its own feedback loop. Not because she hacked it, not because she forced it, but because she refused to behave in predictable parameters. The system couldn't resolve her profile. So it failed. The door opens. A loud mechanical sound echoed. Clank, clank. The final chamber door unlocked. Slowly opened. Light poured in. Ava walked forward calmly. Covered in dust. Sweat dried. Expression steady. No celebration. No emotion. Just completion. Outside, silence before recognition. The recruits outside were waiting, watching, confused, because the system had never failed before. Then, Ava stepped out. The entire field went silent. Even the wind felt like it stopped. Harris stood at the center, looking at her. Long pause. No sarcasm. No testing tone. Just truth. "You broke it," he said quietly. Ava replied, "No." A pause. "I completed it." Silence stretched. Then Harris did something no one expected. He raised his hand. Slowly, firmly, an SALUTED. No words. No announcement. Just recognition. Final moment, the shift. For the first time in Fort Brenton history, the system that broke soldiers was broken by one recruit. Ava Collins stood still as the salute held. Then she finally spoke. "What's next?" Harris lowered his hand slightly and said, "Now we find out what you really are."